Howdy folks, this is just a quick little video. There's a YouTube channel called Stephen Crowder, as most people will probably be aware of him. A controversial chap. And recently, on the 4th of July, he put a video out which was called Bonus, America is Superior, Change My Mind. And this girl sat on there and chatted with him. She's the girl in blue tint glasses and a blue dress or top. And part of it went around the fact that she said that the UK, among other countries, are more superior to America. And the key reason why was that we have universal health care. And he went on to have a conversation with her that kind of said that universal health care in America is a bad thing, and gave a selection of reasons why. So what I did a few days ago was I posted my analysis of the removal of the NHS in the UK means that the housing market and banks will collapse. Brackets, remove a man's incentive to create a wealth estate for himself, close brackets, and that I'm available for interview. And I put in hyphen asterisks at the top of the thing. Stephen Crowder, would you like to debate universal healthcare in the UK with me? So far I've not heard anything back. I keep checking this comment that I've written for replies, and there isn't anything yet. And in fact, I'll read out what I've put because it's got to go up as a video on YouTube properly soon anyway, and I'm going to be on the Unshackled channel in the near future as well for the same thing. Right, this is what I've written. Let's have a quick drink because I'm losing my voice. My UK analysis of the removal of the NHS will mean that the housing market and banks collapse. And then I've put the subtitle, New Explanation into Why the NHS Must Not Be Sold. The UK has been built on a socialist capitalist society, a mixed economy, since the end of World War II, and the generations of people have been persuaded into buying houses, creating nest eggs of savings for the future, having kids, and for things to be passed down in inheritance. Due to how insurance firms work and how the government will categorise you into rich and poor classes as to whether you qualify to get free state care if you're poor, or have to pay for insurances and receive limited liability policies which will run out of funds pretty quickly if someone is critically ill or injured. The main problem is that people in the UK will need to appear poor on paper, in visibility to the government, the banks, insurance firms, to qualify for whatever free state medical care will be offered, i.e. shitty tidbits of leftovers below insurance paid better services. Right, savings in banks, subheader. Regarding financial savings in banks, people will have to withdraw all their money from the bank and store it in tins or safes under the bed, etc., to stop the government and all the other agencies and corporations seeing how much they are worth. And yes, the government, HMRC and the courts can see into and take from your bank account. This happened as an example to Count Dankula over his Nazi pug joke. He refused to pay the £400 court fine, wanting them to arrest him and put him in prison as a martyr to the cause of protecting free speech. But instead, the court just dipped into his bank and simply took it. And if people start withdrawing all their money to store out of sight, then not only will this be a run on the bank, like what happened in 2008-2009 with Northern Rock, but the crime rate will soar as burglaries will rise where thieves go after boxes of money in houses, just like they do against pensioners who have to store their excess savings over somewhere in the region of £21,500 out of the bank, or else they lose their home helps and carers. Home ownership, subheader. Next, to appear poor will mean people will not want to buy and own houses, because you cannot hide the fact that you own one if you do, and it's tied to your legal name. And the medical insurance firms will want to steal all the equity out of your wealth estate and house should someone in the family become ill or injured and need expensive long-term care, and the liabilities value of that insurance policy gets used up. Home ownership will become one lifelong gamble against the health and well-being of the family. Cancer, as an example, for one round of chemo and radio, which I think is 10 of each, costs £40,000 in the UK, but we don't pay it as a patient, I was going to say customer then, we don't pay it yet. And in the USA, a broken leg costs around $25,000, where the invoice goes from the hospital straight to the insurance firm, providing you've got insurance over there, because if you haven't, you're stuffed. So no more house buying means that everybody will move into rent, and I'll get back to that in a second. If the housing market collapses, so will the UK's big 9 high street banks. Why? Well, because believe it or not, banks do not lend money. When you go to take out a mortgage, the paperwork only you sign, not the bank people, therefore not a legal contract between two parties, are not a loan agreement or contract. They are, in fact, known as securities. Essentially what happens is the bank write up a cheque for the £100,000 or whatever the figure is that you wish to borrow to buy the house. You sign that cheque and they cash it in using secret trust fund money, which comes out of your CQV 1666 trust, which you can Google. Didn't know you had a trust called the CQV 1666? Well, you do now. Can you access or control it? No, only the government and the banks can. The banks then put those funds into your account for you to go to buy the house with. And what they actually say is, they don't say, we've put the cash or the money in your account. They say, the funds can be found in your account. And it's a legalese way of them not admitting that they didn't put the cash in out of the bank's own backup of money under the table or at the back in a safe. So what of the paperwork that you put signatures on? The bank wait 28 days, which is cooling off period and whatnot. Then they put those wet ink signed papers that you signed into a portfolio with lots of other people's similar papers, which is called securitization. And those portfolios are secured on the physical asset, which is your house. The portfolios get sold to hedge funds and property speculators for somewhere between 10 to 25 times the borrowed amount in futures on the stock exchange. I was going to elaborate on something there. They go by calling them AAA portfolios. They gamble and use all sorts of wonderful mathematics to figure out how much a particular portfolio of stuff is worth to these big investors. So with this in mind, banks are dependent on people borrowing for loans and mortgages for the banks to then have paperwork to flog for mega profit. And if that dries up because nobody wants the gamble of being seen rich enough to have to pay for medical insurance and everybody moves to rent, then the banks collapse. They will not be able to go asking the Bank of England for permission to print more money into the economy or to give out to new borrowers, but also all of the existing securitised mortgage and loan paperwork will plummet in value, meaning that the gilt-edged bonds that the big 9 high street banks use to demonstrate their own worth will also collapse in value because all the existing homeowners will suffer negative equity as no one's buying houses, so they can't sell and the prices of houses collapse as well. Right, rent subheader. Right, if everybody moves from buying to rent, then because no one can sell their currently for sale houses, they get desperate to sell to agents who sweep up lots of cheap houses into the control of the government, the banks and the insurance firms. And they won't put them into the buying market because what's the point? Nobody's buying. So instead, the corporations that buy the houses on the cheap put them all into the renting sector, and then what's to stop them ramping up the cost of renting in lucrative areas of the UK, especially in and around cities. And wherever there is London Underground access, for example, whole sink estates like Grenville, Brixton, Buckingham, which are all shitholes, will see the poorer people who've lived there for generation after generation priced out of their own communities. Once those buildings and estates are empty, the owners of them will then raze them to the ground and rebuild it all as multi-million-pound apartments for their rich friends. This is called gentrification and social cleansing. This would result in cities becoming rich metropolises, and the poor and working classes will all be forced to live elsewhere. Another subheading, middle working class war. There is another issue which revolves around the financial/social classes. If the poorest among us qualify for free state medical care, you know, that low quality second tier titbit service, then that means that the middle working class will be the lowest on the ladder of people who do have to buy medical insurance, and it may become a reflection of salaries earned, especially if the government identify that the nation of British people are deliberately withdrawing all their savings and current account monies out of sight, or to store out of sight. The government may use that information to force the working class people into their rich-poor categories to determine who has to buy insurances, etc. This will lead to a huge industrial salary and job type problem, because people will not want to be earning certain salaries if A, it pushes them just over the threshold into the category of being rich enough to have to pay for insurance, if they could earn a little less and get free state medical care, and B, it will damage the job market and leave lots of businesses either without employees for these low-paid jobs, or it'll push employers to have to overpay people to do the same types of jobs that were for less money, which will affect the profitability of the company and could risk job losses, business bankruptcies, and as big as social divides of the people. Those earning much higher salaries can generally afford to take the hit, but only up to the point where their family medical insurance liabilities run out of funds, because little Timmy's had cancer for a long time and hundreds of thousands of pounds have been used up out of the policy already. And then it's that family's turn to have to either A, pay their ongoing costs themselves, or B, allow the insurance firms to apply commercial liens against their wealth estates and mortgaged or paid for houses as collateral. Subheader: Farmer Corporatocracy. And it's also highly likely that insurance firms will force people to adhere to the recommended medications and treatments that we all know are killing us, i.e. chemotherapy and radiotherapy, where GC-MAF and cannabis THC are far more potent medicines and treatments and have very little to no side effects. I am certain that anyone who refuses to abide by their medical insurance company's demands will see their policies cancelled. This could lead to backstreet surgeries where renegade doctors diagnose sinister pathology, and then the patient is free to pursue their own means to survive without the real doctors ever knowing a thing, and obviously without it being recorded on a database that everybody in authority can see into. And to what end is this? All of this, in my opinion, is because post-World War II generations, the parents of the boomer generation, were convinced by society and government to buy houses, create nest eggs and savings for rainy days and things to pass down to the kids. But now that the boomer generation are retired and dying, all those paid for houses from the last two generations are being passed to the kids for free. And that's no good to the banks. Therefore, the whole thing, in my opinion, is designed to get the houses back. Because if things keep going as they are, generations of people buy and pay for houses and they pass them down to the kids, and those kids don't have to take out mortgages and they're sitting on free houses. And a few generations later, the banks have ended up with no assets to securitise or to use as collateral for other side trades and all the rest of the dealings that they get up to. So that's what I've put on Stephen Crowder's video. So I'm literally just waiting to see if he'd like to do a debate. I mean, I'm in the UK, he's in America. And of course there's Skype and FaceTime and all manner of technology, so we could do a two-way video or a hangout on YouTube. So Stephen, if you want to get in touch, please do. Thank you.